Now we would go to the honourable member for Calgary-Lougheed on a point of privilege that he communicated with my office today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Acknowledging the seriousness of raising a point of privilege, I rise today pursuant to Standing Order 15 on the grounds that the Minister of Children's Services breached the privilege of the members of this House by withholding information from members and intending to share that information with the media before members of this House. Standing Order 15.1 states, a breach of the rights of the Assembly or of the parliamentary rights of any member constitutes a question of privilege. And to cite Erskine May 23rd edition, page 75, parliamentary privilege is the sum of the peculiar rights enjoyed by each House collectively and by members of each House individually, without which they could not discharge their functions, and which exceed those possessed by other bodies or individuals. And thus privilege, though part of the law of the land, is to a certain extent an exemption from the general law. And further from Erskine May 24th edition, page 251, any act or omission which obstructs or impedes either House of Parliament in the performance of its functions, or which obstructs or impedes any member or officer of such House in the discharge of his duty, or which has a tendency, directly or indirectly, to produce such results, may be treated as contempt, even though there is no precedent of the offence. To cite O'Brien and Bosch, page 61, the House has the authority to assert privilege where its ability has been obstructed in the execution of its functions, or where members have been obstructed in the performance of their duties. Members are not outside or above the law which governs all citizens of Canada. And from Erskine May, page 251, any disorderly, contumacious, disrespectful conduct in the presence of either House or a committee will constitute a contempt, which may be committed by members of the public, parties, witnesses, or by members of either House. Mr. Speaker, the Minister's repeated obstructive responses that answers would be forthcoming later outside the House was clearly disrespectful to this Assembly. Another clear reference in this regard, Mr. Speaker, comes from O'Brien and Bosch, page 82-83, which reads, the United Kingdom Joint Committee on Parliamentary Privileges attempted to provide a list of some types of contempt in its 1999 report, which included assaulting, threatening, obstructing, or intimidating a member or officer of the House in the discharge of their duties. So, Mr. Speaker, in this House yesterday, we witnessed a very vigorous debate regarding vulnerable children residing in the same house where Serenity once lived. And the Minister repeatedly delayed answering questions until after question period had ended and chose instead to share the information with the media before giving it to members of this House. So, quoting from Hansard, page 966, the Minister for Children's Services, in response to questions from the Leader of the Official Opposition, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will be speaking further to Albertans on this matter later this afternoon. But I want to remind members that when people make statements without all the facts, inaccurate information is given to the public. And again, page 966, responding to the same member, I'll be sharing more information about this matter this afternoon. Now, Mr. Speaker, despite the repeated urging of members of this House, the Minister refused to share that information with the duly elected representatives of Alberta, instead choosing to accuse the opposition of spreading misinformation. Now, further, in response to the member for Calgary West, on page 973 of Hansard, the Minister stated, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, again I will say that I'm sharing more information for Albertans later this afternoon. And that was the third time during question period yesterday alone, that the Minister stated her intention to share information with the media before sharing it with the members of this House. So clearly, this is not a slip of the tongue, but a deliberate withholding of critical information in contempt of this House. Now, in this regard, Erskine May, page 261, clearly states the House will proceed against those who obstruct members in the discharge of their responsibilities to this House or in the participation in its proceedings. So, Mr. Speaker, the minister refused on numerous occasions to provide adequate information to members of this House which would have allowed them to better advocate and represent for Albertans, including Serenity and other children in question. Clearly, a breach of members' privilege. Furthermore, the minister impugned the reputation of members of the opposition yesterday by claiming that information provided by opposition in their questions was inaccurate and they were spreading misinformation. So, Mr. Speaker, I think we all know the purpose of questions in this House is to provide Albertans with the most fulsome information regarding issues of public interest. And if the minister was interested in celebrating and combating misinformation, sorry, I'm going to read that again. I want to be very accurate with my words. And if the minister was interested in combating misinformation, she had every opportunity to do so in this House yesterday. Further, the minister was clearly obstructing the members of this House in the discharge of their duties. Every member of this House has a duty to speak out on issues of importance to Albertans, and for the minister to accuse the members of this House of trying to spread misinformation while deliberately withholding the relevant facts is an affront to the people who elect us to this House, and clearly is a breach of privilege. So in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, we ask you that you rule this is a prima facie breach of privilege. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.